Daniel Bryan again put over Cesaro in their match. Boy, if only Daniel Bryan had the book in this company 5 years ago, what might have been. And I love this because after a giant swing, Cesaro put Bryan in a sharpshooter, and he won with the sharpshooter. A shocking finish with Daniel Bryan tapping out, although I think the bigger shock was the fact that somebody actually tapped out to the sharpshooter. Finally. Instead of it being used as a setup move for the next spot. After the match, Cesaro reached down. Bryan was sitting up against the ring rope, and Cesaro put his fist out, and he gave Bryan a fist bump out of respect. Wrestling Inc. earlier in the week had reported that Cesaro's contract was due to expire after WrestleMania this year. Later in the week in The Observer, Meltzer said that Cesaro has either already signed a new deal or has verbally agreed to a new one. Point being, he is staying with WWE. Now, Bryan handpicked Cesaro for the babyface spot in that gauntlet match a few weeks ago before the Royal Rumble. That ultimately the spot went to Shinsuke Nakamura, where he got screwed at the very end by Adam Pearce and Roman Reigns. Well, he got screwed by Roman Reigns. They put Adam Pearce on top of him. But that was supposed to be Cesaro. That was not supposed to be Nakamura. But at that point, he had not yet signed his new deal. So that tells you all you need to know about how serious this company was about this renewed Nakamura push, which is not very enthusiastic, after all, about actually legitimately pushing this guy above the level that he's already at. He was the backup. I at least thought he would get a title match out of it with Roman Reigns, because Roman Reigns needs one or two people to beat between now and WrestleMania. I mean, Nakamura was never going to win the title, but he could have been somebody to go in there against Roman at the Chamber, go in there against Roman at Fastlane next month. Maybe he still will be. Anything is possible. I at least thought he would get that spot. Maybe Cesaro will get it. If Cesaro ends up going face, I mean, he did the fist bump with Bryan. That was a babyface move. I would love to see Cesaro, even more than Nakamura. I would love to see Cesaro get a Universal title match with Roman Reigns, either at the Chamber pay-per-view or at Fastlane. I'm trying to think in my head if Cesaro has ever gotten a world title match in this company. I mean, maybe once, and I'm just not remembering it, but I don't know that he ever has. We know Nakamura has. He got a whole bunch of them. Feuded with AJ Styles. He feuded with Jinder Mahal. But Cesaro has never, I don't believe, gotten any kind of serious push or even a world title match on a pay-per-view or on TV that I can recall. Certainly not for the Universal title. But I'm racking my brain trying to think if there was even a WWE title match, and I'm coming up blank. I would love to see him in there with Roman Reigns, either this month or next month. Why not? He's not going to win. But why not? Why not give him the shot? Daniel Bryan is trying his hardest. He has now jobbed out twice to this guy, okay? He is, I say jobbed out, but he put him over. He's put this guy over twice on TV. He is trying his best. But he can only do so much. He may have creative influence, but he does not run the creative team. Bryan can only do what he can do. I know a lot of people are going to be very upset who are Cesaro fans to hear the news that he has re-signed with the company and that he is not leaving to go somewhere else. I mean, we had Miro in yet another wedding segment on TV this past week. So look, it's not as if Cesaro were to go to AEW and show up on Dynamite in a few months, that all of a sudden he would be pushed as a headliner. And I don't even think that he has to be. I would just love for him to be elevated to a more prominent spot. And these wins over Daniel Bryan, they're nice. And if Bryan does have any real creative pull on that brand, which he does to some degree, then maybe this will actually lead to something. But you have to remember, it has been 10 years. Cesaro has been with WWE now for a decade. And I fear that he has fallen into that Dolph Ziggler category of, you know, he's been there for so long at a certain level, and the guy's a hell of a worker, but he's just there to make others look good more than he's there to make himself look good. It is infuriating to me that he never had a match with Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar wrestled a lot of people. Brock Lesnar had 2 matches with Kofi Kingston. He had a match in Japan with Kofi Kingston. He had an 8-second match with Kofi Kingston on TV. He wrestled Braun Strowman. He wrestled Finn Balor. He wrestled Samoa Joe. He wrestled Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose and all of these different people. AJ Styles, Daniel Bryan. But there was a period of time where Cesaro was a Paul Heyman guy. He was the only other Paul Heyman guy at that time. I think Curtis Axel came right after that. But there was that link there. And I remember saying it even at the time, and my God, we're going back 6 or 7 years now, but I can remember it like it was yesterday. I said, man, this is just tailor-made. If you keep these guys together into the end of the year, beginning of the following year, which would have been, I think, the beginning of 2015, then you could build to a match like just a one-off. And it could even be on like the Royal Rumble pay-per-view or something where sometimes they'll put a world title match on that maybe isn't the strongest because the show really is sold based off interest in the Rumble matches more than anything else. I mean, they did Brock Lesnar one year at the Rumble against Bob Holly. But you could have done a Brock Lesnar-Cesaro title match on a pay-per-view. That wasn't necessarily the real main event, but get them in the ring together. And we never had that. In fact, the way they blew off the whole alliance with Cesaro and Heyman was the epitome of laziness and giving up on somebody. I mean, they literally just had a very friendly, amicable parting of the ways. Out of nowhere. And it was only after a few months. It didn't even last very long. The way they ended his alliance with Paul Heyman was such a waste, and there could have been a story there to do a match that Brock would win, but to do the match, they could have done it. I mean, Cesaro is one of the very few guys who could probably throw Lesnar around the ring like a child. He doesn't necessarily look like it, but I believe he could do that. And even a loss would have elevated him just a little bit more and given him credibility, the credibility of having taken the fight to one of the top stars in the company. But that's the problem. They don't see him at that level. They don't want to. They're not interested in giving him that credibility because they don't see him that way. They never have and they never will. They see him as a tag team specialist. That is what they see him as. The man has been thrown into 4 different tag teams. I talked about Lana before. Lana went from Natty to Asuka, now to Naomi. Cesaro's got her beat. First it was the Real Americans with Jack Swagger. And guess what? They started to really get over there at the end until they broke them up. Then he teamed with Tyson Kidd. And they were starting to really find their groove and get over when Kidd got hurt and he almost died and had to retire. And so that was the end of that team. Then came The Bar with Sheamus. And then they teamed him up with Shinsuke Nakamura. This is how they view him. That is the role that they have for him. And I get that Daniel Bryan is trying to push his friend and somebody who I'm sure he looks at and thinks is very underrated and deserves better. It's a big deal to see Daniel Bryan tap out in the middle of the ring, or it should be. It should be treated that way. Corey Graves was trying to put it over on commentary like it was a big deal. But the key is with everything. The key is in the follow-up. And we all know that in 3 months, Cesaro is going to be in the exact same spot he's in right now. As will be Nakamura. I just wish they had shown Cesaro more respect as a single star early on in his career. I mean, to go back and hear Vince McMahon on Stone Cold's podcast, wonder if maybe the fact that he's Swiss, if that potentially is why he can't connect with the audience. You know when Cesaro showed real signs of connecting with the live audience? When they just let him go out there and do what he does best. And propel people into the air and uppercut them and show off his strength. Those were the moments where people were most into this guy. And I do think he's made improvements over the years in terms of, how he sounds and comes across on promos and interviews and stuff. He is much better now than he would have been even, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And if you really watch him and see him even sometimes on some of these YouTube videos outside of WWE television, if somebody were to say, "Oh, Cesaro has no charisma," or he has no personality," these people are dopes, because clearly they haven't seen some of these other videos with him. We just haven't really seen too much of it on TV. He's been a heel now for so long. He's always, there's certain heel tropes, that they're easy enough to do. It looks like now maybe he's potentially turning face. We'll see if that changes him at all on TV. But I think back to someone like Chris Benoit. It does. It makes me think of someone like Chris Benoit. I used to hear that same knock on Benoit. Great wrestler, but he's boring. He's a vanilla midget. He's got no personality. He's got no character. He can wrestle, but that's it. There's nothing else there. Used to hear that all the time about people like Benoit. But Benoit's the one who went on to win a world title and headline a WrestleMania. There was no reason that Cesaro could not have at least been in the upper mix at times over the years. I actually think his style would fit in very nicely with New Japan. I would have preferred to see him in New Japan more than AEW. The talent pool that he would have been able to work with there, my God. But it's possible that he just is not interested in traveling back and forth to Japan or relocating to Japan the way that Will Ospreay did and the way that Juice Robinson did. They literally moved their lives to Japan. Maybe he just doesn't want to do that. Maybe he's perfectly happy and content where he is right now, and that's fine. That's his choice. I respect his choice, but he will never get the respect he deserves as a single star in WWE. And that sucks.